Hello.
Hello, Terry.
Yes,
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Um, yeah. So, what would you like to talk about?
Oh, we could talk about urban farming.
Let's do it.
All right. Um, so I've got a small acreage, just under 2 acres, in Saanich. I've been here for about 10 years, and moved out from the city, um, trying to be a bit more self-sufficient. I thought it'd be nice to have some chickens and grow a garden, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I had 3 sheep, and just to keep the grass down,
Wow.
which seemed like a smart idea at the time. Saved me from mowing the lawn, but as things kind of happened, pretty soon I was breeding sheep, and now I have a small flock of right now about
Fuck.
13 sheep right now.
Wow.
So yeah, as I got into it, I discovered there's certain advantages to having a farm. There's some tax breaks there. So given that, land is expensive in Victoria and property taxes are high, I
hmm
thought it made sense for me to pursue farm status for my property.
Right.
So provincial government has um, a policy where if you generate a certain amount of revenue on your farm property, you can get a substantial discount on your property taxes. And so I looked into that, tried to do that, and discovered it was quite a difficult process. Um, the information for new farmers isn't readily available. You would think that you could go to a website or go into the office and they could tell you everything you need to know, but it didn't really work that way. I kind of submitted an application, got rejected, came back the next year, tried again, and seemed like every year or so I'd learn something new about the process,
Right.
and always being worried that I was going to lose my farm status.
Right.
Like I was saying, the tax break's quite considerable. It's about your property taxes are about 10% of what you would typically pay,
Wow.
which makes it really worthwhile because you don't
Absolutely.
make much farming, but that tax break is pretty great. And then the income tax as well that you can get, is pretty good. But that's more straightforward. It's dealing with the provincial government that's been a little bit of a challenge. So sometimes they ask for your records, sometimes they don't. Um, One of the challenges I had at the beginning was I'm just under 2 acres, and so properties over 2 acres only have to generate just under $3,000 in revenue,
Wow. That's yeah.
which not so bad. Like I do lamb, I do meat chickens in the spring, about 50 meat chickens,
hmm
and then I have laying hens and I do eggs. And so it's not too hard to reach that threshold,
Yeah.
but I'm under 2 acres.
hmm
So when you're under 2 acres, it's $10,000,
Wow. What a difference.
which is really hard to do on
I
two
bet.
acres.
Yeah.
As with someone like myself who, farming is a part-time thing. I've got a full-time job as well. Makes it challenging, and one of the reasons they do that is so that people with large homes on big lots don't apply for this tax break by, you know, maybe not really farming, but selling the odd thing here and there. So that's why the threshold is higher if you have less than 2 acres. So I'm about 400 square feet short, which is not much at all. But I have to lease land from someone else to bring me over that 2 acres.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and which is a real pain, right?
Right.
Because so I get a lease from a neighbor. They have some fields that I'll hay. But as I found out after a couple of years, they seem to not be so interested in doing it. I understand they get a tax break as well, but maybe the paperwork is a bit of a pain.
Right.
So I've had to move around a few times to find new people to lease from, and usually it's kind of a last minute thing, and you're kind of scrambling because, the government said, okay, your lease just expired, you're not going to be eligible anymore. And, with everything else going on, usually that's the last thing on my mind is, when I signed a lease for a piece of property, often I'll just go over there and they'll say, oh, no, we're not going to do it anymore. And it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
And then it's a bit of a scramble. So,
Wow.
So that's one of the challenges, right? The other thing is being such a small acreage, and I have some hay fields, not very much, maybe like a half acre. It's very difficult to find someone who's willing to bring their equipment over to hay that. The cost of mobilizing equipment is more than what the hay is worth, right?
Right.
So I have to hay my property kind of by hand instead of having machinery, because it's not worth me having machinery, right, to make that investment for, 20 or 30 bales a year. Not really worth it. So I'm the crazy guy that scythes his field by hand.
You got like an experience thing or something for
the
millennials who want to get out and get their hands dirty on a farm. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but there's, always some challenges with owning a farm. You can never plan everything that's going to happen. There's always things that kind of, hit you sideways. Animals get sick when at the worst possible times, that sort of thing. I remember we were getting ready to go on holidays, and like 5 days before, one of my sheep takes ill.
Oh, geez.
And I didn't think it was going to make it. And there's this great woman that does my shearing and gives me advice. And she came over to look at it, and she said, "Oh, I think I can save this." And I said, "I've got to leave on holidays." She says, "Well, I'll take it." And sure enough, she took it. We went on holidays. She sent video clips of it getting better, running around, and
wow.
By the time we got back, it was completely fine, and I thought it was done for. So there's something to be said for experience, for sure. So, yeah, she's invaluable. So anyone who has sheep, I'm sure knows her.
And what sort of sheep did you say? What sort of sheep do you have? What the breed?
I've got a bit of a mix. So I started with some border kind of Cheviot crosses. Again, I wasn't really thinking about breeding them, so it didn't really matter to me at the time. And every year I rent a ram for 6 weeks from the same woman. So she's always giving me a different ram, different breed, so that, you get a healthy gene pool. And so my sheep are a real mix of all sorts of different breeds now.
That's really interesting. So, as a city slicker, sheep, so are they pretty much interchangeable, like in that sense? Like you can just breed different breeds of sheep with different breeds?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all the same species, so they'll all mix, just like, there's all sorts of different looking humans, and they can all mix, and you get all different cool combinations. And, dogs, same thing, right? You can breed all sorts of different breeds of dogs and get interesting combinations. And I don't know if with sheep, if a purebred is healthier or stronger or more vigorous than a non-purebred, if it's similar to like dogs. I don't know. But yeah, my sheep seem to be pretty healthy. I've had some compliments on them. I don't show them or anything. Lori, the lady that I've been talking about, she often encourages me to show them.
Wow.
So, I think it's just because more people that are into that, the better it is for the industry, I guess. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I've been collecting my wool since I've had the sheep for like 10 years now, and I understand I might have enough to make it worthwhile to send it in to get it cleaned and carded and all that stuff, so I can start using it for whatever, for spinning or for stuffing pillows or blankets or something like that. So that could be fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So you've had the farm for 10 years now, and you started with 3 sheep, and it's taken that long to get enough wool.
Yeah, well, I think you could send it in at any time, but I think, it's better to have a whole bunch of it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a lot cheaper than, sending in just a little bit, because, it's basically a paper bag full of fleece that you get when you shear each year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would think that after they cleaned that and carded it, you'd probably maybe end up with half of that. So, not a lot there. Yeah.
And is there a service? Is there a service in the Victoria area or on the island?
No. I understand. I think the only place maybe in Canada is in Ontario somewhere.
Wow.
So yeah, this woman, she gets a truckload of fleece every year from all the local sheep farmers, and then she'll send that off to get done, and then it'll come back and I guess get divvied up or however it works. And yeah, people do what they do with it. I mean, you can use it for all sorts of things, right? You can even use it to insulate your home. Yeah, all sorts of uses.
Well, prime, sort of quote unquote grown in BC wool. I mean, that sounds like a very marketable commodity. We've got a lot of, a cottage industry, clothing makers and things like that out here that might be interested in something like that. So
yeah. And I think as far as like the knitting and the weaving stuff goes, I think the type of sheep is pretty important. So I think because mine are such a mix, my wool would be quite a lower grade, and so you'd just use it for stuffing things,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it would be great for knitting or anything like that. I think there's special breeds that are specially grown just for their fleece and just for that.
Right.
Yeah.
How about milk and meat and things like that?
Yes, so we raise lambs for meat, and that's probably the most difficult part about living on a farm like this is, right now is the time of year when those lambs that you've helped raise and you've nurtured as much as you can, they go to the butcher to get slaughtered, and and it's tough, because you work so hard to keep them alive. Seems like everything's conspiring against you, and
then you send them off.
And then you send them off. Yeah, it's the saddest day on the farm, no question. Yeah. My daughter is keen on us finding homes for as many of them as we can, rather than sending them off to get butchered. And so we're going to try that. We'll see how successful we are. I wonder how many people would be interested in owning a lamb.
Just for the sake of owning a lamb, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I know that we still have one of the original ones from 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so he's kind of the pet. And because he's a guy, the rams have a short life, and the ones that aren't rams typically have an even shorter life. So he's been very fortunate that he's lasted as long as he has, because most of the ewes, they, after about 4 or 5 years, they can't breed anymore. So then they get sent to the slaughterhouse as well. So yeah, it's a tough part of living on a farm, for sure.
Yeah.
They got a lot of personality. You come out to feed them every day, and then they come running, and they have their own personalities, and you get to know them, and so it's
Yeah, I think people on farms and farmers get sort of more accustomed to that type of these real hard truths and hard realities of life.
Yeah. I mean, death is part of living on a farm, and I think the size that I am, since I have so few animals,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to get attached to them.
Yeah.
Because, they tend to all have names. And that makes it, makes it a little bit more challenging. Chickens I'm not so attached to, but some of those are characters as well. So.
You have quite a few chickens as well?
Well, right now I just have the layers. So I think we have about 14. Because of COVID, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get chickens this year. So I had actually had a standing order for my meat birds. I get 50 meat birds every spring.
Right.
And so those come in March. So that was happening right around the time that we went into lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a challenge in itself. But I called up the hatchery and I said, "Do you have any layers? Because I'll take some." Because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get any because my flock was down to 4 birds. And so they were able to send me about 10 birds. I typically get sexed layers, so I just get the females.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't do that, so I just got 10 birds, and of course 4 of them are roosters. So the mornings are a bit loud here right now. So it might be time to have a rooster for dinner one night, but we'll see about that. We tend to lose the layers. I let them run around the property during the day, and so often the eagles will come by, and they'll once they get one, then they'll be back to get the rest of them. So then I have to put them back in their run and coop them up. But so far, this year's gone well.
Yeah.
They're all doing well. So, but yeah, I've had a few times where they've gone missing really fast. And so I guess if it was a rooster, I probably wouldn't be too sad.
Wouldn't send out the search party. Yeah.
Yeah, but the hens are pretty nice to have all year round, fresh eggs. There's nothing like it for sure.
So how long, like you'll get them as chicks, I guess, and you'll raise them. They'll lay eggs for you for what, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years, they're usually quite productive. Then after that, they start tapering off, and you start spending more on feed than you're getting in eggs.
Right.
Yeah, I remember when we moved in, the place came with 21 chickens, and we were so excited. Woohoo! We started our animals already, and we found out pretty quickly the reason why they were included was they were eating more than they were laying. So
right.
But the chickens are pretty great. They're pretty easy too. So and they're fun to have them running around. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, you mentioned eagles. What sort of other predators you have in the area?
So eagle seems to be the big one.
Yeah.
I've heard from people who used to live around here that what actually might be getting them is also ravens.
Wow.
Apparently, which I was surprised to hear. But apparently, a couple of ravens will corner a chicken and kill it.
Really?
And so those are kind of the day predators.
Right.
But at night, I've had some problems with raccoons. It hasn't. I don't think it's been too bad. It was mostly with the meat birds that I had. So they're in a smaller enclosure, and they're within the enclosure, but they would be sleeping against the cage, and the raccoons would actually grab them through the cage.
Wow.
Yeah, but the worst predator was mink.
Mink.
So
right.
Yeah. So one year I had 50 meat birds a week away from getting processed. So I had about $1,000 of feed in them. And came out in the morning, and mink had killed every one of them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, one was just barely alive, and I tried to keep it alive, but it died like a day or two later. But yeah, and it didn't eat any of them. It just killed them all.
Did they drink the blood? Is that it?
I think they get some sort of bloodlust, and they just got to kill everything before they do anything about it, before they eat or,
the timing is, it's like they knew that's just,
oh, I know. It was awful.
Ah.
Just awful. So, not only are they all dead, but now you got to dispose of 50 carcasses, right? And then it's like, it was an awful job. And then that same year, out of the same mink, or another mink came back and actually came up through the floor of my laying coop. I guess it had gotten a little rotten. And killed all my layers as well.
That was the same year?
Yeah, same year.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was like disheartening.
And yet you didn't give up. You kept going.
Yeah.
I mean, did the farm life teach you a bit of that? It definitely builds character, I get a sense.
Yeah. You got to be resilient, and you can't always plan for everything, right? There's all sorts of unforeseeable things can happen, and animals die. So
so on that note, I mean, the challenges and losing the animals, I think in my generation, there are a lot of folks who sort of glamorize, perhaps, or romanticize the farm life.
Yeah.
Whether it's in an urban setting or a more pastoral, rural setting. What would you have advice, positive or negative, to give to young people, young adults, people in their 30s, maybe looking to sort of buy a little hobby farm or something? What sort of do's and don'ts?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, the thing that I didn't think about was how much the animals tie you down, right? It's difficult to get away, and that's always been a challenge ever since we've been here, is finding people to cover for you so you can go away on holidays, be it for a few days or for longer. And, when I was new to it, I didn't realize how critical it was until I lost a ewe and her lamb, or lambs. She went into labor. I wasn't here. I had a roommate at the time, watching the place. And, by the time he realized what was going on, it was too late. And, that was my inexperience. And so, planning for that's a challenge because, often people are keen to do it once and then they realize how much is involved, and it gets harder and harder to find people to cover for you, especially when they live somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
They need to come out here in the morning, let the animals out, like chickens and stuff. They need feed in the morning and then at night. So that's, a couple of trips every day. So it's a lot to ask. This year I actually tried something different where I got some people to house sit while I was away.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were here. They were immersed in it.
Yeah.
And I think that made it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And then it was also like a bit of a holiday from whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
And especially with COVID, people living in the city that might not have had a lot of space,
mm-hmm.
Maybe no outside space. They're living in an apartment, something like that. It was really nice to come and have 2 acres and, be able to do almost whatever you want to do, right? So that's one of the big challenges I find. And
there's something in that. I mean, that's a win-win. Like, you take the family that's got, 1 or 2 kids and they're stuck in a townhouse in Esquimalt or a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condo in downtown Victoria, and you offer them the farm experience, for a week or so with a bit of training, and then you can go away. Yeah.
So we'll see how that works, in the future.
Good.
Hopefully it didn't work this year just because of the pandemic, but we'll see. Yeah. But the other thing, and I don't know if this is positive or negative, depends on, whoever's thinking about doing this, is, it really becomes a lifestyle. And it's not something you just kind of do on the side. It kind of gets in your blood, and it's a hard thing to stop doing, I find. Like, I really get attached to taking care of the animals. There's something special about that.
Wow.
Going out there every morning and every night. It's kind of a special ritual. And didn't expect that to be the case, right? I just thought, okay, just raising an animal, it's not a big deal, but yeah, you really get kind of attached to them. Not like a pet attached, but yeah, there's something to be said for caring for animals like that, and yeah,
Is there? Yeah, no, is there like a therapeutic element to that too? Like, let's say we get busy with our lives, or say you mentioned you
yeah,
were full
oh,
time
for
at
sure,
farm. Does
yeah,
it help bring you down, kind of thing? And
yeah, yeah, yeah. It helps you decompress and
yeah,
forget about everything else because it's just these animals and they just
want to
want
eat.
you to take care. Yeah, they want to eat and and they can't wait,
Yeah,
right? If they're limping, you got to look at them now and deal with it. And um, yeah, it may throw your whole day sideways, but that's that's the way it works. But yeah, they give something intangible back that it's hard to explain. But
you,
yeah, I
you met.
never.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I never expected that I'd be a sheep farmer. Yeah, so
Yeah,
but
these winding
yeah,
roads that we venture down. I imagine for your children, you mentioned you have a child. Do you have one or two or three kids? Or?
yeah, I've two girls.
Okay.
Yeah, so they've been here for most of their life. Um, we're a split family, so their mom lives in town, so um, they live a city life and they live kind of a sort of country life. Um, and they've been involved in 4-H when they were younger.
Okay.
I was hoping to kind of show them um, the benefits um, of raising animals.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping they'd take to that, and they're not really into it now as they're teenagers, but I'm hoping that something of living on the farm will rub off on them, and they'll see some value in it as they get older, and at least if they don't return to it, at least they'll have appreciation of where their food comes from and what it takes for that food to be brought to your table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important because I think a lot of people have a disconnect with where their food comes from, and it's important to have appreciation of that and to value um, the people that work hard to feed us all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I do a very, very tiny part, but there's some people that's their livelihood and that's what they do full time, and it's not a glamorous job and it's not a well-paid job, but at
Someone's got to
the end
do
of
it.
the day, it's one of the most important things, you know, for all of us is the ability to eat good food, um, and often that gets forgotten.
That's very well said, and I think farming did used to be the backbone of Canada,
Yeah,
up until I think 19, I don't know what year, but what
yeah,
decade, but in the last half century or so, still, at least half of Canadians,
yeah,
lived on and grew up on a farm. Like it's only in the last century, let's say half century, that we've become as disconnected as we've become.
yeah, for sure. But I think that's coming around, right?
Hmm.
I'd say we're definitely, in the last 20 years, seeing a big improvement in that, and with this whole move to um, sourcing your goods and services locally, whether it be food or something else. Um, I think people are starting to appreciate where their food comes from and um, who's growing it for them and that stuff. And I think that's good.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Well, and so maybe we can close on this topic then.
Yeah,
Yeah, in the heart and the spirit of sort of more farm to table and sort of more local farms and maybe less commercial farming. I don't know. So what can the government, as we're in election, middle of an election right now as well, what sort of is it, or is it the place of government, or is it in their within their power, their scope? What sort of things might municipal, provincial, federal governments do to make it easier for small farmers like yourself?
Mm. Well, I know personally, just making the farm status process a bit more transparent and easier to understand
Right.
um, would be great, because it seems to be a bit shrouded in mystery, and I'm not sure why that is. If it's a conscious attempt for the government to kind of limit the number of people that are applying,
Mm.
there seems to be a disincentive there. But I think that would be a good step forward, so that people that are wanting to do this, before they get into it, they kind of have an idea of what's involved, and monetarily know what they can expect to help them out. Because I think a lot of people that want to have a farm, it's probably a stretch financially to make it work.
Right.
And knowing where you can source financial support like that, tax breaks, I think could be really important. I know for me, yeah, it's critically important. That's one of the reasons why we're still here, is because of those tax breaks.
Right.
And if I couldn't access those for whatever reason, then I don't think we would be here. So yeah, making that process transparent would be great. But I think in the big picture, I think there has to be kind of more policies to encourage more people to be doing this kind of thing.
Right.
Finding some way to make it more attractive, so that it's not just kind of a small percentage of society that's doing it, but a bigger percentage. And it's interesting with the pandemic, how many people realize that they might have to be responsible for their own food,
Mm-hmm.
and how many people have grown gardens this year and,
Mm-hmm.
tried to raise chickens. And yeah, it's amazing. And I hope that a lot of those people that have tried it, stick with it, because I think that can only be a good thing.
Definitely. Those are good sentiments.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Terry, thank you very much for your time and your insight.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. And you take care, and yeah, good luck with the animals.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Terry.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.